Congressman Brian Mast, thank you for coming with us today to speak about all of South Florida's water management problems and water quality problems. How did you know that you had to do something to change the status quo?
Look, working on algal blooms, working on discharges from Lake Okeechobee, it's been literally my #1 priority since the moment that I took office. It started with saying, listen, I need you to put me on the committees that handle waterways so that I can go out there and have the fight that I need to have for my community. It's my community. That's why this is my fight.
You are fighting for it, and that's why people have so much hope in you and your new legislation. Tell us a little bit about that legislation to change the operational priorities of the Lake O.
So, you know, when I'm working on this on so many different fronts as it relates to discharges, as it relates to algal blooms, as it relates to the total management of the water system from Central Florida all the way down to South Florida. Now, one of the big things that I've been working on is to say, listen, there's priorities that were written into law back in the 1940s that says this is the way that Lake Okeechobee is going to be managed. We're going to look at flood control. When I say we, the Corps of Engineers said this. The Corps of Engineers is going to look at flood control. The Corps of Engineers is going to look at recreation on the lake, navigation across the lake, irrigation for agriculture and other interests around the lake, municipal drinking water supplies, the use of water off Lake Okeechobee to prevent saltwater intrusion into Florida aquifer for those that drink water down in Miami-Dade and Broward areas. Those are the priorities that are listed in Lake Okeechobee management. There is no mention whatsoever of the health and safety of people who get the discharges of water from Lake Okeechobee, especially when the lake is covered 90% in algal blooms, 150 parts per billion microcystin algae, cyanobacteria, blue-green algae. No mention in the management of Lake Okeechobee whatsoever about the health and human safety of people. That's what we're trying to work on changing. If the Corps of Engineers is going to have discharges year after year after year, we're going to say, listen, you can't not take us into consideration when you're managing the lake. That's not okay. And the Corps of Engineers has, you know, since their inception, not had to consider the health and safety of anybody in our community. That's going to change.
If your legislation isn't adopted by the end of this year, will you reintroduce it next year?
So my anticipation is not that this piece of legislation that I introduced is going to be passed in 2018, but I have every intention of following this through to the end until it is brought to completion, until managing Lake Okeechobee, our coastal estuaries, everything else for the health and human safety of the people that have to receive the water off Lake Okeechobee is made the #1 priority.
If politics doesn't work for people, what do you see happening?
Politics doesn't always happen quickly. Legislation doesn't always happen quickly. But for our community, it's not an option that we allow this to somehow be brushed off and not continue. This is a boiling point. This is something that has to be fixed. You look at all the projects that are being undertaken, not just my legislation, but you look at all the projects that have been worked on, the Kissimmee River restoration, all of the dollars being sent to the Herbert Hoover Dike so that it's repaired, the raising of the Tamiami Trail south of Lake Okeechobee so more water can flow south. This is why I'm hopeful. This is why I'm an optimist. All of the community engagement, the people that are out there saying we're not going to take this, that's why I'm an optimist, because we are going to get this done because of everybody coming together and working on this.
What do the people in your district need to do?
One of the greatest things that people in our community is doing is lending their voice with the documentation that I need to go out there and be a good legislator and hold these entities to account. People are out there in the community saying, these are the dead fish, these are the dead crabs, these are the, you know, the dead this, the dead that, here's the algal blooms, you know, this is what's going on with dead dogs in our area. This is being documented, and that documentation is exactly what I need to go up there and lay in front of the Corps of Engineers or the Water Management District and say, you can't do this, this isn't right, you're not taking health into consideration, and we're not going to tolerate it.
Thank you, Congressman Mast, for coming and talking to us about your vision, you know, for Florida. We wish you the best.
Thank you. I wish you the best.